Good morning, everyone. Well, depending on where you are, good afternoon, good evening. Probably not morning for anyone, actually, not even me.
Um,
It's a pleasure to always be learning together. And again, today, this class is part of the full Zman here at Drisha, the second session of Why Pray in a Community with Miss Rachael Gelfman Schultz. With that, I'll turn this to you, Rachel.
okay, so last week we looked at the repetition of the Amidah, the otherwise called the Chazarat Hashatz, and we talked about why do we repeat the Amidah, and we used that as a way of beginning to talk about the larger question of why do we pray in community. So one of the answers that we saw given actually for why we do the repetition of the Amidah, and I think someone suggested it here as well, was that the entire repetition is in order to do the Kedushah and also the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing. So this week, we're going to look more closely at the priestly blessing and ask ourselves what's so important about the priestly blessing that we do the entire repetition of the Amidah just in order to do the priestly blessing. And next week, we'll look at the Kedushah, which will also connect on some of the themes of Kaddish. And in so doing, we'll explore more options, different ways of different perspectives of looking at this question of why pray in community. Okay, so last week we talked about how the repetition of the Amidah really enables us to pray for each other, and in this sense, when we're saying pray for each other, I think I mean make requests for each other, ask God things for one another. So in other words, we talked about how the repetition of the Amidah and community prayer in general can sort of enable us to go beyond our own needs and to be aware and become aware of the needs of others. And that is how that's one of the important aspects of community prayer. And in so doing, ultimately, we also saw from Rav Avi Weiss that praying for others and making ourselves more aware of their needs can ultimately also inspire us to take responsibility for others. That is sort of one of the ultimate goals, to take responsibility for one another. So that was last week. This week, I'm going to share this week with the priestly blessing, we're going to talk, okay, there we go. We're going to look more at what does it mean to bless one another. And Rabbi Nechemia Poland, anyone who was in my Vayikra class remembers, is one of my favorite rabbis to quote, who teaches in Hebrew College in Boston, says that while they may be closely related and sometimes overlap, prayer and blessing are really different concepts. Each is too important in the biblical world for the two to be confused or for one to be collapsed into the other. So today we're going to looking less at prayer, and of course, blessing is also part of prayer, but prayer in the sense of making requests for one another, and more at the question of what does it mean to bless one another. So before we start, and even before we look at the actual text of the blessing, I want to sort of ask people, what are your associations with the priestly blessing, like mainly emotional associations, but what are like the associations that come up? Just to make a note for those of us in Israel, which I think is just me. Is anyone else here in Israel? No, right? Maybe somebody I don't know. But in Israel, we say the priestly blessing in its full. I mean, the priests actually get up and bless every day. And outside of Israel, of course, it's much more rare, only on special occasions, special holidays. Though there is still in the repetition of the Amidah, there's like the chazan, whoever is leading the prayers, does say the priestly blessing, but you don't have the whole, the whole ritual when the priests get up and with their hands and okay, so that's just important to note. Yeah. So what are people's associations with the priestly blessing, Birkat Kohanim?
I read over all of the the materials, and a few things struck me. One of them is that, well, when we do it on the holidays and when all the Kohanim go up, it was talking about how it's very important that we be face to face. But first of all, the Kohanim have their halesim over their heads, and they've got their hands in the special formation.
Right.
And I always learned that you're not supposed to look directly at them. So I turn my shoulders, so I'm not looking directly at them. That's one of the things.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes. That's an interesting question. On the one hand, we're supposed to be face to face. We're not supposed to have our backs to the Kohanim, and they're not supposed to have our backs to us. But on the other hand, there's like something about the power of the moment, right? That we say it's like too powerful. We can't look because it's like the Shekhinah is coming through their hands, or something like that. So we're like, so we're looking down, or you said to your shoulder, whatever it is, or closing your eyes, or under the talus. So it's like an interesting, interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah. And so the second thing is that so you're supposed to be concentrating on their words, and you're looking at them and you're concentrating on their words, and you say Amen. But in most machzorim, especially, there's a whole business where, like, after each sentence, you say something else in your mind under your breath, and then there's the whole paragraph about, I dreamed a dream, and my dreams should be this way and that way, and healed and helped and everything. So how is it concentrating on their words if you're saying something totally different?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. We're not going to get into all of those things that you say under your breath. Interestingly, in Israel, I've seen that much less because we do it every day. I don't know, but I mean, not every day, but if you go to shul, I guess you do it. I'm not going to talk about all the things that you say under your breath. They're optional, obviously. I mean, the dream thing is fascinating, and it does connect to a lot of the things we're going to be talking about. Of why is this the time that we pray that our dreams are for the good, right? It's sort of another form of blessing, right? They're saying, may you sort of bless our dream, and which seemed like a bad dream, and like transform it into a good dream. So that's like actually a very ancient connection and very, very interesting. We're also not going to get back into it too much. We're going to go more for the like focusing on the words approach, but it's a very good point.
And then another thing is that when the Kohanim all go up, it says, they're supposed to be expressing their love and their caring and their concern for all the people. Now, who judges whether each individual person there really feels like way, or they're just, I'm a Kohen because I was born a Kohen, but I care less about these people?
Good question. Yes, I don't know if anybody really. Yeah, and we'll get to that when we get to those sources. I don't really think anyone is really interviewing them and asking. It's more like, I think, like an ideal that they should, that they should be expressing their love, but I don't think anyone is really enforced. You can't.
But
really
one of them, it actually says that if the guy doesn't feel that way, he shouldn't be going up there.
Right.
But
But it's like he has to know.
It's like when a woman goes to mikveh or something, nobody checks to make sure, well, did you count the days right? Did you do this right? Are you supposed to be going this? You just assume that if they go, they're going, and what happens. It's not that you interview them to make sure that they did it right.
Right. We're sort of, yes, it's true. We're putting it into their hands, but we'll get to that also when we get to that source. But yeah, it does seem like they have to judge for themselves. No one's enforcing it. No one's interviewing them before they, before they go up on the bima. Do you really love these people? But there's an idea that maybe that they should be looking into themselves, and like, it's sort of presenting an ideal, I think, more than a practical, like, we're going to enforce this, But we'll get to that.
And then, of course, the last part is, of course, with Leonard Nimoy, who he actually did look up. And that's why in Star Trek, now we know how the hands are held.
Yeah, you want to read the Leonard Nimoy source?
And he's, you know, he's from the Boston area. His father was
That's true.
my
Yeah.
husband's barber.
There you go. All right. Yeah. So you want to, so he's, okay. Yeah. You want to read that source? So he's actually not
Okay.
talking about the hands in this source, but since you
Yeah.
mentioned it, go for
He
the source.
says, so I'm with my father, my grandfather, and my brother sitting in the bench seats. Women were upstairs. 5 or 6 guys get up on the bima, the stage, facing the congregation. They get their talits, mitzvah, over their heads, and they start this chanting. And my father said to me, don't look. So everyone's got their eyes covered with their hands or their talit down over their faces. And I hear this strange sound coming from them. They're not singers, they were shouters and dissonant. It was all discordant. It was chilling. I thought something major is happening here. So I peeked and I saw them with their hands stuck out from beneath the talit like this. Wow. Something really got hold of me. I had no idea what was going on, but the sound of it and the look of it was magical.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for that dramatic reading. Does this resonate with anyone? This idea that it's like sort of the magical power of the moment, or yeah, I'd like to hear other people's associations.
Whenever
Yeah,
I hear
yeah,
the
Rose.
Birkat Kohanim, so there on Yom Tov, there's these paragraphs that they give you to say, so you know you don't kind of get into.
Yes,
And
yes.
I was not. I don't even know if I was married yet, but I was kept saying, "Oh, maybe I'll use a name like this or that just to get distracted." Elisha and Aharon, you know, Miriam. But the thing is, on a Shabbos in Israel every week, it's like, where do you go with that? You're just standing there, and it just it's unusual. It's not always so inspiring necessarily, you know.
Right, it becomes more in Israel. It becomes more routine, and like I said, I don't think those Amy also brought up those paragraphs that people say under their breath. I haven't seen that so much in Israeli Sidurim. Maybe I'm wrong, but yes, it becomes more of a challenge, I would say, to see the magic, right? If you experience it as magical to begin with, when it happens all the time, not only on Shabbos, also if you go during the week. Yeah, someone else had their hand up. Oh, my dad. Yes, go ahead, Dad.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of add to that it seems to be a very different experience to me in Israel and here. In Israel, it's almost seamless with the rest of the service. So you know, going back to the quote from Nehemiah in the beginning there, you know, it is difficult to distinguish between the blessings and the prayer, tefillah. But here,
It's a big deal.
It's sort of almost a discrete part of the service.
Right.
So even though it's embedded in the Amidah, it's its own thing, and you know there's a lot of attention given to it, and so on. Where you know, so it's sort of a different experience. One's more of an everyday experience, and the other is a wow, this is something very different is going on.
And of course, Leonard Nimoy is speaking from the American experience,
right,
you know,
right,
like representing the American experience. But the question of the relationship with the rest of the Amidah is a question I want to keep in mind. We're going to get to it at the end. Hopefully, we'll have time. But because it is right there in the middle of all the requests, right?
Yeah.
You just stick it in, right? Well, I guess after Modim, so it's not, you know, we're thanking God also, but it's still, yeah. So like, what is it doing there, and how does it connect to the rest of Chazarat Hashatz is a good question. Yeah. Anyone else?
Rachel, I don't know if you can see my hand. You can see me.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Yeah, you guys can feel free to talk because I can only see.
I
can only see a certain number of people at once.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
So Well, I have two things. First, to just say, I think conservative synagogues have a different,
Yeah.
it has a different flavor than it does in an Orthodox synagogue.
Okay, explain what you
Um,
mean.
And well, we don't do it that often. We pretty much just do it on the Chagim. We do
But
not do
that's
it
the
on,
same as Orthodox, meaning everybody in America.
well, we don't do it on Shabbat though.
I know, but I'm saying that's the same anywhere outside of Israel.
I didn't know
It's
that.
only in Israel that we do it on Shabbat.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Also,
that.
Orthodox synagogues only do it on
Oh.
Shabbat. Only do it on the special Chagim.
Okay. So at any rate, so there's, especially during the high holy days when people are there that are
Yeah.
not there during the rest of the year,
Right.
certain people who go up there, I am not comfortable with them doing that blessing, the morning blessing for me.
Yeah.
To a point where it was so disturbing to me, I actually went to the rabbi and he tried to make me understand that. He said, don't look who's up there, just see it as the beautiful tradition
Wow.
that it is. And so it's helped. Not 100%, but it does
Yeah, I
help.
mean that really gets to Amy's question of like who's checking that their
Exactly,
intentions are so
exactly.
pure. Just because they
Exactly.
happen to have a priestly lineage doesn't mean that they're meaning, and we'll see the source later says like they're supposed to really be loving you, right? But obviously
Exactly.
nobody's checking and turning
Yeah,
them away either. And what do you do if you actually, because the source that we'll see says not only that they should be loving you, you should be loving them. What if you really don't? It's like
that's it.
it's a
And
good
then
point.
I just go back to the first thing that you brought up today that I'm not sure about the
Yeah.
difference between prayer and blessing, the concept. So I'm just going to say forever for me, a prayer was always my asking God for something,
Yeah.
where a blessing was more like showing gratitude and more of a positive type thing.
Yeah.
That's my own personal take on that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think we're going to go in that general direction. Like, what is the difference? Pray, like when we talked about in general, the repetition of the Amidah, we're talking about asking God, will you please heal this person? Will you give them parnasa, like livelihood? Will you, whatever it might be. And here is some kind of positive, we'll try to define it more precisely, but some kind of like positive, positive, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever. Raise, sort of going out there.
Vibe.
Okay. Vibes, yeah, exactly. Okay, what I thought you were going to do, direction I thought you were going to go in, which you didn't, in terms of the difference between conservative and Orthodox, is, which no one has mentioned yet, but Rabbi Poland discusses, is this whole question also, I mean, it is connected to what you were saying, Nancy, also about, maybe I'm not comfortable with these people blessing me, is like this whole question of hereditary priesthood, right? Can be a very difficult one in our more egalitarian age. Okay. Is your laryngitis better, Nancy? Can I ask you to read it, or are you? Okay,
No, it is better. I can read it.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
100%, but it's definitely better. Which one is that now? 2?
Number 5. Yeah.
Number 5. Oh yeah, okay. The notion of a hereditary priesthood is perplexing in our day and age. We are suspicious of inherited privilege of all kinds, and many people find the idea of innate distinction between individuals to be troubling and problematic. Yet while the special election of Aaron and his progeny is a central feature of all the priestly texts, hardly anything remains in today's Judaism of the priestly sacrificial system. Since the destruction of the Jerusalem temple almost 2,000 years ago, Rabbinic Judaism has placed prayer and Torah study at the center of religious life. But the rite of the priestly blessings is still practiced in traditional synagogues, chanted by those claiming descent from Aaron. It is almost the only surviving element of ancient temple-based, priestly-centered ritual in contemporary Jewish practice. What are we to make of this sacred endowed prerogative in our egalitarian society?
Right. Which is in some conservative shows, I think they or reform, like they get rid of the priestly, the priestly aliyot and the priestly blessing entirely. In traditional synagogues, we still have it. and in many conservative synagogues, more traditional conservative synagogues. So there's also a question that I think we need to put out there, right? Like, why? What makes them so good? Like Nancy, especially if you have a particular problem with one of these people, but even that, like, why, what gives them the right to bless us? Like, why are they like superior to us in some way? Or, there's no kohanim here, right? Nobody's ever done the priestly blessing. No. Anyway, I'm curious to hear from that side also how it feels. I remember our cousin married a Kohen, and he was telling us how just his like hands get really tired. That's like all he had to say. It's like, oh, it's really, and so it's like the people who make the priestly blessing very long, it's like very hard for, my hands get so tired. But beyond that, I'm curious like what the emotional experience is. All right, so we're going to look at first at the actual words, and then, okay, so I'll just read them in the English, but please, well, I'll read them in both because the Hebrew is important. This V'yedaber Adonai al Moshe lemor, daber el Aaron ve'el banav lemor, ko tevarchu et bnei Yisrael emor lehem. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yisem lecha shalom. V'samu et shmi al bnei Yisrael v'ani avarchem. The Eternal spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, thus shall you bless the people of Israel. Say to them, may the Eternal bless you and protect you. May the Eternal cast the light of his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Eternal lift his face up in your direction and set peace upon you. And so shall they set my name upon the Israelites, so that I myself bless them. All right. So what do we see from here? Just looking at the words, like what is the nature of the blessing? Like what are we blessing with, sort of, and why, like what clues do the words here give? Why, why do we do this blessing? What are the priests trying to convey? Like what are some of the key words, concepts that we see here?
I guess what I'm seeing, this is Joan, if you can't see me.
Hi, Joan. Good to see you.
What strikes me is the reciprocity. You do this blessing, and in return, I will bless you. And also,
the priest do this blessing, you're saying.
The priests do the blessing on the behalf of the peoples, asking for God's blessing to them. And if that's done, then it seems like then God's name is among them. What that means exactly, I guess we'll probably talk about. And then in return, God will bless the people. I take that to mean the people and the Bnei Israel, and not the priests just.
Right. So the priests are blessing the people, and through that, God will be blessing the people.
Well, it seems like there's an intermediary step to me.
Which is?
Bnei Israel. Well, I guess that's
right. Yes, exactly. What is that? My name will be upon the Israelites, so that I myself bless them. Yeah, exactly. Also very interesting. Okay. And what do people see as the nature of the blessing that the priest, I mean, it's an interesting question, exactly what's going on here. So the priests bless the people, and then as a result, God blesses the people, or the priests just sort of conduits of God's blessing. Like what you were saying, Joni, was sort of like the priests bless the people, and as a result, God maybe sets his name upon the Israelites and then blesses them, right? Like the sort of multi-step process. Okay. And what is the nature of that blessing? Like what are the key parts of the nature of the blessing that is given? Like what? Amy? Joni, are you still talking? I don't know if you're also on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say that it says that you'll be blessed, that God will take care of you and give you peace in your lives, and just basically to protect you and take care of you.
Yeah, exactly. And peace, whatever that means. We'll talk about that. Okay. Anything else anyone want to add about the text itself before we?
I guess the Yehuneka, the being gracious, which is not so clearly defined what that means.
Exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting. Yes. What is this chen, right? The grace that God is giving to us, which we'll see. Well, we'll see. We see elsewhere in the prayer also. We'll see. Maybe we'll look at that too. Okay. So in trying to figure out exactly what is the meaning of this blessing, I wanted to look first at the blessing that the priests say, the Kohanim say, before they do the priestly blessing. And it's somewhat of an unusual blessing. Okay, so I'll read it also in Hebrew and in English. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'kedushato shel Aaron, v'tzivanu levarech et amo Yisrael be'ahava. Blessed are you, eternal, our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with the sanctity of Aaron and commanded us to bless your people Israel with love. So first of all, what is unusual about this blessing? Like, what strikes you? Oops, sorry. What is like, yeah,
The Kedushah of Aharon. None of our other blessings ever mention anything else. It's just God's blessing to you, and this is to be blessed with the Kedushah of Aharon.
Yes, exactly. What does this mean? Be Kedushato shel Aaron. What would we normally say there? Asher Kedushanu.
B'mitzvosav.
Right, b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, right? We would normally say, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us. But here we have this very interesting phrase, B'kedushato shel Aaron. So that, I agree, is the first and most striking, I think, unique thing about this blessing. What else is unique, perhaps? Yeah. Go ahead.
With love, we don't really hear a lot about love. I mean, we hear about it in the Shema, but we don't hear it very often in any other relationship to prayer. That's going to be love.
I mean, it appears elsewhere in the prayers, but in most blessings on doing a mitzvah, right? You wouldn't say lahadlik ner shel Shabbat be'ahava, right? That God blesses us and commanded us to light the Shabbat candles with love, right? Or any other, or leshev basukah with love, like that God commands us to sit in the sukkah with love, right? So that's also very unique. In other words, what do you take from there?
I'm not. Aharon was known for his love of men and women, and he was a peacemaker and wanted to promote love and not have conflict. So maybe there's a little bit of a connection with that too, even though he was the high priest. He was the ultimate.
Yeah. So you want to read the number 7, Mishnah?
Hillel used to say, be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace, pursuing peace, loving people, and drawing them close to the Torah.
Right. So, and in that way, the two pieces are connected, right? That God, eternal, who has sanctified us with the sanctity of Aaron and commanded us to bless your people with love. That part of being sanctified with the sanctity of Aaron is loving peace and pursuing peace, loving people, right? And drawing them close to the Torah, that the two are connected. And why would it be important that this particular mitzvah is done with love as opposed to lighting Shabbos candles? I mean, you should hopefully do all mitzvah with love, right? But why here do we have to call it out? Yeah, Ellen.
This is, as Amy and maybe Nancy pointed out, being concerned about maybe the people that are bestowing the blessing. I mean, they're really bestowing God's blessing, but because they're maybe ostensibly having an impact directly on other people's well-being, that's, you had mentioned it in the beginning, that they really need to be doing this with an open heart.
Yeah. So if you're going to be blessing people, right, you need to be doing it with an open heart, with love.
You're asking about the love part, is that it?
Yes,
Is-
exactly.
Okay. So also these are
Who's
emissaries of God.
speaking? Sorry, I can't see.
I'm sorry,
Who's speaking?
Rosie Friedman.
Hi, Rosie. Sorry, just not showing up.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
so-
Go ahead, Rosie.
So the awesomeness of the role of being, a Kohen, what they do in the Beit Mikdash. So it's a reminder from God. They're emissaries of His love, like they're handling what we're supposed to do, the mitzvot, in terms of the karban and everything like that. So it sort of lightens the load and makes it more embracing.
Yeah, I really like that phrase that you just used. Emissaries of God's love. That's a beautiful phrase. That's the whole point of the priests, right? They're not representing themselves. They're emissaries, like you said, of God's love. And I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to put it.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Nancy,
Yeah,
you
go
know,
ahead,
you
Nancy.
almost read that, or I almost read that in two ways, that command us to bless your people Israel with love. So when I first saw it, I thought that was the actual commandment, was the people the love, to command them.
Maybe it is in some way. Yeah.
Or is it the way it's to be delivered? To lovingly through the blessing. It's
Right. I mean, I think the line is a bit blurred, right? I mean, Vitzivanu, He commanded us, Livarech et Amo Yisrael, like He commanded us to bless your people, but to bless your people with love. Meaning, it seems like the love is very intrinsic to doing the mitzvah, right? Then in some way, if you don't do the mitzvah, you're like, if you don't do the mitzvah with love, you're not doing it really, like you're missing the point. Maybe you're not doing it all. Since we keep bringing it up, I'm going to read the Zohar, since this is sort of, so the Zohar says, any priest who does not love the people, or whom the people do not love, should not spread out his hands to bless the people. Like, he shouldn't even be up there, right? Like, there's some way in which the love for the people and the people's love for him is a prerequisite for doing this mitzvah of blessing the people.
And it has
yeah.
these two pesukim first about Moshe and Aharon, and he kind of handed over. He didn't hand it over. I think God wanted him to hand it over. He was the original person to be the head of it, but Moshe couldn't do all the roles. So it's already a unified brothers, and it makes so much more something to emulate.
That's a great point, and it's very interesting because basically Rabbi Pullman talks about this, how throughout Sefer Bereshit, it's like one brother gets the blessing and the other one doesn't, right? And so blessing is a very narrowing thing, right? It's exclusive. Only one person gets it. Only one of the children gets it, and the other one, is sort of pushed aside. And Moshe and Aaron is like they transform it, right? That both brothers are blessed, and both brothers are blessers, really, in some way. And that's sort of like the beginning of the sort of making the blessing more universal, even egalitarian. I don't know if we would say that, but that it's like that the blessing is expanded, right? It's not just like we bless this person and this person we reject. We bless all of the children of Israel, right? And Moshe and Aaron are like the example of it, because they're brothers who actually work together and each have their own role and are very loving to one another also. Yeah, that's like a whole nother direction, but a really important point. Okay, so I wanted to look at sort of explore further, look at a couple of Hasidic sources of what's going on with this love. Why is it so crucial? The Maor V'Shemesh is Rav Kalonymus Kalman Halevi Epstein of Krakow, sort of expands on what we've been talking about. And he says that the verse hints that one who comes to bless Israel must have this quality, that he loves them. And he's, of course, working off the Zohar also, with a love as powerful as he loves his soul and heart. Even the lowest of the low among Israel, he loves like his soul. And through this, he glorifies them before their Father in heaven with a plethora of virtues. And through this, he arouses compassion and great forces of loving kindness and draws upon them all manner of blessings. So like Joni was talking about, like, what exactly is the mechanism, right, where God's blessing comes to rest on the people through the priestly blessing. And the more of a Shemesh is sort of saying that we're through the Kohanim loving us, through the priests loving us, that somehow arouses God's compassion so that God loves us also, which is like a very mystical idea, but I want to also try to bring it out more, and also take it down into our world. Just a couple more sources on this idea of love. The Sota in the Talmud, this is the source that Amy was talking about, says that it's very important, right, that thus shall you bless face to face. You say face to face, but perhaps it should be face to back, right? That we should have our back to the Kohanim, or they should have their back to us. The verse teaches, say to them, like someone speaking to a friend. So that this like face to face is also crucial to the blessing, like this intimacy of face to face. And another Hasidic commentary, Toldot Yaakov Yosef, says, as in the Talmud, they explain, saying to them face to face, this is like Rabbi Moshe Al-Sheikh, the Rama, wrote about, you should love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. So we saw this also last time, like what is the idea that we say at the beginning of prayer, we say, you should love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. This is somehow like underpinning our whole experience of communal prayer, or a whole experience of communal prayer is inspiring us to love one another. And it says, through there being love among the lower ones, it causes love among the upper ones. And through turning the face towards the face, it causes bounty and blessing via the direct light. And this explains saying to them that they should be face to face, which is a description of love and affection between people. And through this, the Eternal will bless you. And this is why when the Eternal casts the light of his face upon you, which is turning face to face, this causes direct light. Now, obviously, this is, very Kabbalistically influenced, but I was wondering how are people understand this idea that we're seeing in these two Hasidic sources, that the love and affection between people brings God's blessing on us, basically. How do people understand that in sort of a more, like in a more worldly way? How do you think that works? Any ideas? Like what that means? Why would loving each other like arouse God's love and bring blessing onto us? Or how does that work?
Well, we're all in the image of, and it's easy to sometimes hide what it is an indiscretion from Hashem, but it's much more, of a test how you are with the next person, yeah.
So since we're all in the image, just play that out a little bit more. Since we're all in the image of God, therefore, what happens like when we love one another?
So I guess it's a reflection of what for creating man on that fifth day, I think.
Sixth
and
day.
It's a mutual thing. He says whoever God would be is much more satisfied about how people act with each other.
Like we're making God happy that he created these people in his image, sort of.
Or that we're following in these midot that he has given us, even though he's not seeable, but practice it on people and sort of also edit what we do and also modify what we do and develop,
Right. That's interesting. You're actually almost saying the opposite. Like you're saying we are, I mean, I think obviously it goes both ways. You're saying we are like emulating God by loving other people, right? In some way. Yeah? Am I understanding you correctly? Right? In other words, here it's saying we love other people and that makes God love us. You're saying God loves us and therefore And I don't think they're at all mutually exclusive. I think it's sort of a reinforcing circle. But you're saying God loves us, and therefore we also love other people, right? We see that they're the image of God, so we also love them.
Right. One example is, let's say, how Abraham did the Akedah. So that immediate response to do it, the Sheirut of God. And it's the kind of thing that's what we're asked to work on, even though it's very difficult. You're not getting the satisfaction immediately, because it's a being that you don't see, but it's the idea of using the ma'alot, the traits that we get from the forefathers, and then we practice them on people. That's what I was saying, was in the image of,
We're practicing God's love in some way.
Also, it's so important to remember, you know how many there are people who say, oh, I love Judaism, it's just the people I can't stand. Or, there's people who, religion is not in a vacuum. It's not me and my God. I mean, there may be other, the Eastern religious practices, or, you go into nirvana, you go into these states of meditation. It's very impersonal, but Judaism isn't like that. We're a whole group, we're a whole collective, and we're in it together. So it's saying when you look at each person has the Tselem Elohim, each person made in God's image. So you recognize the godliness in each person that you're with, not just you and God, and me and God, we're in an exclusive relationship. It's you with all the people in the relationship with God.
Yeah, we're definitely going to expand on that and talk about that. In other words, that an intrinsic, you can't love Judaism without loving Jews. Meaning without love, not even, I would even go so far as to say without loving people in general, but certainly without loving, right? But in other words, that's like an intrinsic part of the religion. You can't just go off and practice Judaism, in a cave. I mean, maybe we saw there is that story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but ultimately he had to come back. Like he can't do that.
He was
putting
fires everywhere because he was,
right, which is saying a lesson. We won't get into that story now, but in other words, like Judaism doesn't present that as an option. Like you gotta love people. So Amy, you want to read this story? So this source the book that I took, just to let it, this book that I took the Rabbi Polin quote from, we'll see later also some quotes of Rabbi Polin. It's called Birkat Kohanim, and it's part of this series, this Matrix series. So, and it has a number of wonderful essays about Birkat Kohanim. So a number of these quotes are from that book. So anytime I said Birkat Kohanim, it is a reference to that book, which I highly recommend. Yes, so Amy, you want to read this? So this is talking about sort of like, what does it do to what is the effect of Birkat Kohanim on the community?
So the priestly blessing can have transformative, even radical effects on a community. Namely, it is by nature a blessing by the community, to the community, of the community, which is a fancy way to say that via Birkat Kohanim, we ourselves bless ourselves from ourselves. Primarily, the priestly blessing is a sacred moment to foster unity within community, which effect may ideally spread beyond the time of its recitation.
Right. In other words, the effect of fostering unity, that the priestly blessing is the inspiration, the experience we have during the priestly blessing of loving one another and being united as a community, is an inspiration that ideally will impact far beyond that moment where we're saying the priestly blessing. Keep going.
Okay, in a word, the mitzvah fulfillment of Birkat Kohanim is a concretization on the loftiest level of Ahavat Yisrael, loving all Israel completely and unconditionally, that we have to work hard to get beyond the superficial to uncover the true essence. The great truth of the priestly blessing is itself a reminder that we should do the same with every member of the community. Get behind the superficial to see the good in everyone.
Yeah, which I think touches on what you were saying, and also Rosie. And by the way, Nancy is also an interesting response, perhaps, to your question of like, what do you do if you really don't like, right? It was Nancy, right? Who you don't feel like you want these people to be blessing you. Maybe actually part of the challenge is to see the good even in these, in these Kohanim that we otherwise don't.
I think it's also telling that every Friday night at the Shabbos table, the parents go around and they bless each child with the same blessing.
Yes, what do you mean by that? The same, which is the priestly blessing, of course. So definitely, that's
so
the
we
last
crazy.
version.
We started differently. Like we compare our the boys to Ephraim and Menashe. We compare the girls to Sarah, Rachael, Rivka, and Leah. But we say the words of the priestly blessing to each of our children.
Right. So in other words, it's not only, right, this is a blessing that we took, like if we get back to Rabbi Fallon's question about the lack of egalitarian nature of the original priestly blessing, later on we see how we took that blessing and we also, us non-priests also say this blessing, and we're going to get to that later on. A good point. Okay, so we've looked a bit mainly about what the priests, right, attitude is supposed to be towards us, right? That the priestly blessing requires love. And what are we supposed to be doing, like the people who are being blessed? So the Zohar did talk about love, right? That we are also supposed to be loving the priests. What else? Like what is our attitude supposed to be? And one thing is we could be mumbling all those words, but say we are, we're like, which are connected also, especially the dream. But like, what are we supposed to be doing during this time?
You can also reflect on what it might have been in those days, because we're so far from it, because the physicality of the korbanot. So it's kind of a moment of meditation. I don't know. You can just reflect back what it's like. And then I look at my husband because he's a Kohen. Not that.
You
not
do
that
have some experience.
before.
Who is that? Is that Rosie speaking? Yes, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, reflect back to what it might have been like, even though it looks a bit macabre, it's actually physical. It's actually, not so anything about love. It's about service, but you kind of get the moment to think about that during that time.
I mean, it is one of the few times in our service that we actually reenact something that happened in the temple, right? It does happen. It happens a little bit on Yom Kippur, but it's pretty rare. So to sort of connect to that moment, like this, what might it have felt like in the temple? Interesting. Yeah.
Right. It's not always beautiful, and it's not always, ephemeral.
And I'm sure in the temple there were also priests that we didn't really want to be blessing us, I would guess.
Right.
In fact, we know of some of them, like they definitely exist. What else? Anyone else have?
I was going to say, to go back to that though, yes, I love the rabbi's answer, that to see it for the beauty of the tradition that's been passed along. The ritual, thank you. Yes, it's been passed along. But I think to answer the other question, like we who are being blessed also, as it says, that we have to like look at everybody around us and see the good in them.
Right. We also have an active role, right? We're not, the loving is not only from the priest, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work if it's only from the priest, right? We also have to be trying to see the good in the other members of the community. So I want to go a little bit in a different direction, where we're going to connect it back in terms of what we're doing. What are we doing? So James Jacobson Marzels, who lives in Hanaton, half an hour from me, great, excellent person. So he wrote a really fascinating essay in this same book on Birkat Kohanim called "Receptivity, Dependence, Love, and the Healing Power of Blessing in Defense of Birkat Kohanim." So again, he's also trying to, in terms of the egalitarian critique that Rabbi Poland gave, he's trying to sort of rescue Birkat Kohanim in some ways. So he says, to be blessed is to recognize not only that one is needy, but also that one cannot meet all of one's needs by oneself. It is in many ways the fundamental posture of prayer. So what does it mean to be the one receiving the blessing? This is what he's talking about. The true blessing is the ability to relax in the midst of the struggle, to find peace in the uncertainty, to receive what is. This passivity is neither disempowering nor about being weak or helpless. Rather, it is about recognizing that no matter how efficacious we can be, we are never in control, and that the striving, fear, and tension of control has no place for peace or love. So according to Rabbi Jacobson myself, I don't know how he calls himself, but the sort of our Birkat Kohanim is an opportunity to be passive, to sort of, let go of control. And he talks about a lot in his essay how this is like all these studies, how like the ability to be passive is a very like difficult thing for people to do in America, especially American culture. Just the ability to receive. And that's what we're doing, right? We're saying we give up control. We are just receiving right now the blessing. But that's not disempowering, and it's not about being weak, right? And he says, okay, and he goes on to talk about, and how is that connected to what we've been talking about so far, this idea of love, right? About the priestly blessing being about love and loving one another. The surrender, dependence, receptivity, and passivity structured into the priestly blessing are what enables that love. And the piece that is its fruit to be actualized. That is, love is actualized through receptivity and surrender. The protection of love, the peace it provides, is the deep knowing that we are held in love, held from outside in a posture of dependence and passivity. In other words, in order to love, we need to be able to receive, and we need to be, to lose control in some way, to surrender in some way, to be, and that's really what enables the love, and that enables the protection, right, that we talk about in the blessing, and that enables the peace.
That's always the pitfall. The pitfall of davening or praying. You're not always ready to relinquish, the control, or to think about that the being that's high, that you always want to be reminded of, again, that service to God. So it becomes like this self-conscious action. You get back and forth, these mixed feelings about that,
Interesting. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge, and there's a lot of back and forth. The ability to sort of let go and to admit I'm not in control, right? So it says, Birkat Kohanim invites, I just had to, it said so many beautiful things. I couldn't choose just one quote, so I said it. Birkat Kohanim invites the blessed to simply let go, to no longer be in control, to give up self-protection, to relinquish the illusion of ultimate autonomy, and so to be open to love, blessing, and peace, to be open to the vastness of divinity. Birkat Kohanim is a precious and relatively rare opportunity to open and receive the love that is being sent to us. It is an opportunity to stop doing, controlling, and making, and instead to take a few moments or occurring Shabbat to soften, open, surrender, relax, and receive. So he also makes an interesting connection here to Shabbat, that's also part of what we're doing on Shabbat. We're sort of letting go, at least momentarily, of our doing, controlling, making side, and letting ourselves soften, open, surrender, relax, receive. So Rabbi James talks about this a lot on he's talking about here mainly what we're doing, right? Rabbi Nehemiah Poland actually takes this one step further in terms of this idea of surrender, receptivity. So part of the blessing, as we've talked about, is the hands, right? So this comes from a verse in Leviticus. Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them. So why does anyone know why do we lift our hands?
Does that have to do with when Moshe did that all the time?
Yeah, how so?
Raise his hand and then put them down, and I forgot what that was about right now.
So when Moshe, it's an interesting point. And when Moshe's doing his hands, he's sort of acknowledging that everything's in God's hands, right? So I do think it's connected. The answer that most people have heard is sort of the Shekhinah is sort of shining through their hands. And that, by the way, is why people have that, we close our eyes or look down, or we don't look straight because it's too much, it's too much to see. But the Sfat Emet, we're doing a lot of Hasidic thinking this time, another Hasidic thinker. So Rabbi Poland quotes the Sfat Emet. He says, the Sfat Emet sees the raised hands as a posture of yielding, of receiving, of humility. He notes that Aaron's hands were lifted toward the people, which he takes as a gesture of gratitude, acknowledging that the greatness and the distinction he had just attained. This passage in Leviticus that I'm quoting, refers to the inauguration days of the priests and the tabernacle service, are due to the people as a whole. That is, in Leviticus 9:22, Aaron was saluting the people, acknowledging the centrality of their role in his own elevation. Although in Leviticus 9, Aaron had himself offered an entire series of sacrifices, he realized at the end of the day that God had granted him authority only because of the people, which fact he acknowledges by lifting his hands, saluting them. Greatness comes from and requires constant nurturance from surrender. So this is a very different idea of what, I don't think mutually exclusive, but a different idea of what is happening with the hands is that the priests are actually saying, it's all you. It all comes from you. I'm nothing without you. They're saluting the people. So in that way, the priests themselves are also surrendering, right? They're also surrendering their sense of control or authority, right? They're saying, letting go of it and saying, you know what, it's all due to the people. I'm not anything without the people. There's so much more to do. It's only 2 more minutes. Okay. I think we'll do a little bit. We'll finish this off also next time, but I want to just read the rest of Rabbi Poland. Everyone can and should take on the role of the priest, affirming and confirming blessing for those who are not aware that they are already blessed. That's a very Sfat Emet idea, is that we're all already blessed, right? We're all already blessed. We're all in the divine image. We all have this like spark of holiness. So when we're blessing someone, we're only sort of acknowledging what's already there. To the extent of one's certainty, in the place of clarity about blessingness, one is invited to bless those who are not yet clear that they are also already blessed. The role of the priest is to empower others to face forward and bless still others, ultimately inviting all into the great chain of united being, the cascading flow of blessings. So in other words, when the priests are blessing us, what they're doing is giving us also the ability to bless, right? That an essential part of the priestly blessing is sort of sending the blessing outward, right? That we too become priests. In this light, it is not surprising that the Sfat Emet does not emphasize the unique qualities of the lineage of the Aaronite priesthood. Aaron and his sons are chosen to give blessing, that is true, but that chosenness is little more than the confidence to welcome others into the ever-expanding blessed circle. Only when the priests realize that their election is grounded in the supposedly non-elect, right, the rest of us, only when the priests surrender their sense of specialness, only then do they justify and secure their election. At the end of the day, we are all priests. So in other words, we all have this potential to be blessers. And that's what's happening in the priestly blessings. The priests are giving us that, are empowering us to also move on and go and bless other people. Interestingly, we don't really have time to talk about this now, but the Sim Shalom comes right after the priestly blessing and has a lot of linguistic parallels. And according to James Jacobson Meisel, it's like the Sim Shalom is already, we're like taking the ability to bless others in the Sim Shalom, because that's what we're doing. We're blessing others with peace. And another example of that, of course, is Birkat is like what we mentioned earlier, the children, blessing the children, right? So anytime basically that we bless others, whether it's our children or anyone else, right? If we like really mean it and have the intention, we're sort of like expanding the priestly blessing outward. So I want to sort of end with blessing us all that we can both receive and give blessings. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you to everyone who joined us today, and everyone is always a part of our learning community. Thank you so much again, Rachel, and we will be together again next week.